I am honored that you take time out of a busy day to come. Let me just describe what I'd like to do in our time together. Some of you, I'm sure, are probably quite familiar with the ideas in my book, The Innovator's Dilemma, and others might not be. So I'd like to take the first 10 or 15 minutes just to go over the research that was in the book so that we're all on the same page. And then I'd like to present some new thoughts about this phenomenon that I've been working on in the last couple of years. Essentially, The Innovator's Dilemma was written from the point of view of established leaders in an industry, and what are the kinds of things that could cause them to get killed. And I realize in retrospect that the book is really a lopsided view, because on the other side of every one of those pages is the story of a very successful startup company that grew to be quite large. And over the last couple of years, I've been looking through the same database from the point of view of, boy, if I wanted to start a new business, what are the rules I ought to follow to maximize the probability that I could kill the industry leader? And so I thought I'd walk you through some of those ideas as the main substance of my remarks this morning. Where the puzzle came from that underlies the research really was just from living in the Boston area and watching digital equipment collapse. And digital's demise was such a puzzle to me in the late 1980s because through most of the 70s and early 80s, digital was one of the most widely admired and emulated of all the companies in the world. And when you read an article explaining the company's success, almost invariably, the success was attributed to astute management. And it was about 1988 that the company all of a sudden fell off the cliff and began to unravel very quickly. And then when you read the business press's assessments of what went wrong at digital, it was all attributed to inept management. And there's the very same people in charge. And so you had to wonder how it is that good managers could get this bad this fast. And it really is, I think, the common explanation of why that company fell apart, that somehow a management team that had it together at one point lost its effectiveness at another. And the reason that that still was not satisfying to me is that every mini-computer company in the world fell apart in unison. So it wasn't just digital, it was digital, Data General, Prime, Wang, Nixdorf, the Hewlett-Packard mini-computer business, and you folks have all colluded on occasion to do things, but you wouldn't collude to collapse together. You know, there had to be a more fundamental reason that the whole population would just walk in and get gassed together. So that's where the puzzle came from, and as I tried to work on it, to me the most intriguing hypothesis, because going back into the early 70s or the early 80s when digital was really right at the top of its game, those were the very years that it was making the decisions to ignore the personal computer architecture and the Unix operating system. The decisions that led to their demise were made when everybody thought this was one of the best run companies in the world. And I wondered then, might there be something about good management, at least the paradigms of good management that we teach at schools like ours in Stanford, that might actually cause a company to run into this kind of trouble. The reason I studied the disk drive industry to get my hands around this question was one of my advisors said, you know, if you had a genetics problem, you'd never pick humans as subjects. You'd pick fruit flies because you get a new one every day, a new generation every day. And disk drive companies are the closest things to fruit flies that exist in the business world. And it turned out over their history, there had been 6 architecturally defined product generations, and a new company had entered and risen to the top of 5 of those 6 product generations. And so what I'd hoped was if I could just dig an insanely deep and detailed hole in that one industry and come up with a truly data-based well-supported model that explained why it had been so hard to stay on top of one industry,